Thanks, everyone. I'm just going to have my colleague share her screen. Can everyone see it?
Yes, we are able to see it.
Okay, awesome. And Sunita, if you want to go to the next page. Awesome. So just wanted to introduce everyone to the group. These are the three speakers today. We're definitely very excited to be able to speak to you during this lunch and learn. We're hoping you might be able to gain something from this presentation, just different ideas on how to use our system at the state level that we've seen be successful in other areas. So I'm one of the senior account executives here at Everbridge. I primarily cover the mountain states, including Colorado, and I noticed some of our customers are on the call today. We also have James Podlucky. He is our industry solutions manager and really helps with a lot of deployments that do happen also at the state level. And he did come over from working within emergency management in the state of Florida, where we do have a statewide deployment. And then we also have Ted McEldowney. I always say that name incorrectly. He is our senior sales engineer, and some of you on the call might be familiar with him. He came over from the city of Boulder, where he spent about 20 years. So today, we kind of were talking internally about what to discuss. And I really think just giving a background on who Everbridge is as a company, but then just really talking about how you can optimize the amount of people you could reach at a state level. We did get our start after 9/11, and our bread and butter was really always our mass notification system. But in the years, we've significantly evolved. I know our public warning solution is used in over 20 countries. We are protecting roughly 2 billion plus people. We have 160 worldwide patents and 450 plus integrations. If you want to go to the next slide. And as we were talking together, obviously we're living in an ever-changing world, and we wanted to see what would apply to Colorado specifically. Obviously, you do have a lot of wildfires. We are speaking at the governor's level for our IT alerting solution, which would help streamline processes and also help with any ticketing issues and cybersecurity issues. We do a lot with civil unrest, especially in today's day and age. And a lot around the pandemic. So we did have a statewide deployment for vaccine distribution within the state of West Virginia. So we do have multiple deployments for different reasons. So we wanted to give you a bunch of different options today, kind of get you thinking differently about how you operate, not necessarily in silos, but to really work together to really have an interoperability between all of your systems. Perfect. This is just a quick snapshot. We are backed by FEMA today. We do have multiple statewide deployments, some smaller, some larger in size to the state of Colorado, but a lot of them do have a similar use case where they might be prone to natural disasters such as a hurricane, wildfire, or any imminent threat. So we're really working with a lot of state and local agencies. But not only that, we work with a lot of hospitals, transportation, federal agencies, higher education, and K through 12. And this is just a screenshot of our security and compliance. So we are FedRAMP certified. The other thing I do want to mention is we do have an ISO award, or multiple ones, which is pretty difficult to get within the space. And then we've also received multiple Stevie Awards for customer success within the past year. So before I pass it over to James, I just wanted to mention, so what we're really going to go through today, I know as I was speaking with Daryl, I was trying to identify what is the biggest problem, or not even problem, or what does Colorado come up against a lot? And it really stuck out to me, climate change. The other thing is not having interoperability, but also having seasonal residents and how to reach those residents. So today, James is going to go through kind of a before, during, and after for an event. This is based a lot of it on real life use cases where we do have these deployments, but just to get you thinking of different ways to use our system. So I'll pass it over to James.
Thanks, Jessica. Hey, everyone. Nice to see you all virtually, I guess. I'm going to do, like Jessica said, the before, kind of a little intro, and then the before side of being able to optimize your outreach. And when we look at some of the complexities and the challenges that public safety faces today when trying to communicate with the public, the first thing is definitely looking at the population, right? I mean, looking at people that have been moving to vulnerable areas. I know within the state of Florida, we have a lot of folks, not even for the past couple of years due to COVID, but even before that, where we'd have people from different areas come over to the state of Florida, and they may be in like hanging out or living part-time in an evacuation zone for hurricane or something like that. Probably similar to all of you in Colorado. Maybe they're coming to Colorado somewhere and they're in a fire evacuation zone area. We've seen a lot of shifts in people, moving around for work, right? We can work basically anywhere. I can go out to Colorado for 4, 5, 6 months. And the big challenge is, how are we notifying those folks? How are we notifying those seasonal residents of when something bad happens? There's also another piece looking at people with access and functional needs and trying to understand or be able to see if they need to evacuate a specific area and what that process is like. Is it a paper process, or can technology maybe speed up that process and make it a lot smoother for our public safety folks, as well as the different languages, right? So we've seen growing diversity in different languages and culture within various communities. And I think as emergency managers, as public safety officials, trying to understand where those areas are and how we're messaging or sending our messages to them, whether that's in a different language or within their language, to try to make sure that they're able to understand the process if they are in an evacuation area, or when something bad happens, how are they being notified? So managing the expectations is definitely a challenge. And I think that the first thing is basically knowing about it. I believe all of you kind of know what those hazards, what those threats are that Colorado is facing. And the next step is going to be able to do something about it. And that takes a lot of collaboration, and it takes a lot of coordination with your stakeholders, with emergency response officials. So really being able to have that messaging to go out to those folks once you first understand exactly what is about to happen. So telling people about it, I think that, having different tools within communication is important. Having different modalities or different ways of communicating with individuals is extremely important, because as we see, many people are receiving information in various different ways, whether that is through phone, voice, SMS text, whether that is, social media is a extremely large one, where some folks are just always on social media and they're, reading what's going on there. So if we're not communicating through these various channels, I think it's very easy for rumors to start to spread. And it's always harder to get those to fix the rumors than exactly just sending out the message coming from the source so folks can understand exactly what is going on. So right now, I'm going to go through the before side. So really learning how to engage with the community, being able to use systems internally for various different ways and use cases, as well as ways to implement your plans. And then I'll pass it over to Ted to go through the during and after portion. So the first piece is really looking to be able to engage with your community. I think there is definitely a need that continues to grow every single day to be able to push actionable information out quickly to the public in order to save lives. So when we're looking to do this during blue skies, I mean, there's various different use cases and or best practices when it comes to doing that. And I've seen it within my own town, where if I get my utility bill, I'll see an area where it tells me, or like tells me to maybe sign up for an alerting system for more information. Maybe it's on boil water notices, really to get in and to really sign up for alerts that folks care about, right? And there's other ways to do it. I've seen some cases where when we're trying to have folks opt into a solution or receive emergency notifications, that information may be buried somewhere in an emergency management website or a public safety website instead of the front page of a county website or a state website, to kind of just give them an idea. They may not be looking for that, but if they see it, maybe they'll sign up for it. Maybe there's something that they're interested in to try to get them to receive information upon. And there's also on the emergency response guides a way to share that information as well. I know when I was working in emergency management, we had these kind of one pagers on basically how, is my home safe, or do I need to go evacuate, or just typical items of what is needed in case we had a severe weather incident. And then we use those to advertise, right, that, there is an alerting system. This is how you find out more information, but also to be able to have those in different languages. So if we know that there's communities within our area that maybe speak Spanish or a different language, to have those printouts and make sure that they're receiving those in order to expand our reach. So there are some of in multiple languages, like I mentioned, being able to have those different handouts that you may have, right? If you do presentations out into different communities and different areas, teaching them about evacuation zones, I think it's important to have those handouts in different languages or how it would fit their needs. And then also access and functional needs registries is a big topic. I know when I was working within the state of Florida, this was always a big topic, and the process and the way to do that can vary. Some may work well for others, some may not work well for others. And there are improvements that we've seen with emerging technology to be able to speed up that process, sort of like I mentioned before. So if they do need to evacuate a specific area, there's maybe polling ways to do that, or there are, certain ways to, share information with them and also receive information back. So another piece of this, and I'm a huge fan of this, and I've used it during my time in emergency management, where you may purchase a system or some sort of technology to where you want to use it during gray skies. I'm a big fan of being able to use or find solutions or use cases where the technology can be used for a wide variety of use cases. So really being able to use your system day to day is extremely important. And you may ask why. And it's really because people will be familiar with the system. I remember going into an emergency operations center, and there may be folks that don't even know how to log into the system, or they've forgotten their password. I think we've all been there, right? So when you can utilize the system internally as sort of your day-to-day communications, I think that you're really being able to streamline those processes. You're probably able to save some money right there as well by utilizing those different use cases within a single solution. And here we see some with employee check-ins. That was a big one for COVID-19, folks going in and out of the offices, or if they're staying home, working remotely, easily being able to share news and training updates, right? If that's desktop alerting, being able to do that is extremely important. And I think that the internal piece of employee communication is extremely important. It's not just those the residents that we're trying to target, right? There may be essential employees that are reporting to a specific area or doing a specific response, maybe in an evacuation center or within an operations center. How are we communicating with those folks? So another piece here is being able to plan your communications before an incident happens. And there's ways, there's some best practices to do that. You may look at your current plans today and how you're sending messages out. I think a good way to look at, if you are a new emergency manager or if you are someone who has to send out messages, what were those messages sent out previously, right? And can those messages be turned into templates? Or look at past events, and if those events keep reoccurring, what kind of messages are being sent out? And then kind of turn those messages into, easy to use templates where you can, have a drop down of all the evacuation zones within the area and be able to kind of just in different types of variables. So your message is already pretty much pre-populated. You can go ahead and kind of just, when the time comes, look at it real quick, pick what is needed, and then be able to send that out. I use the example of, weather alerts, right? There's a way to automate weather notifications. And without that capability, if you were scrambling to try to put out a tornado warning or any message like that, that has to do with severe weather, wildfires, by the time you kind of craft that message, there's a possibility that depending on how long it takes, that the National Weather Service, they may expire that notification. So when you kind of tie in, automation, with emerging technology, I think it's really helpful and help streamline that process when you're trying to share information to the public, as well as being able to leverage your network, right? I mean, there's a large network out there of emergency managers or public safety officials, and I think when you leverage that network capability, it's important because the message is coming from the source, right? If that's emergency management or government, that message is coming from a source, and how that message is being shared out to your stakeholders, making sure that no rumors are spread. It's nice to have that streamlined approach to be able to take your message, have it be viewed by a stakeholder, the stakeholder kind of take that same message easily it out to their employees. So everyone kind of has the same common operating picture. And then ensure you can deploy messages from different devices, locations, and orgs as a backup. I think the continuity piece is extremely important. I know some of us are maybe, one-person shops, and, I was on the side where I was the only one who knew how to send out an emergency notification. So I think it's important that continuity is there and that there's training and exercise that is being done within the technology that we're using. So, in case something does happen, we can share those responsibilities. Now I'll pass it over to Ted.
Thanks, James. So, and continuing in with the optimization and the expanding of the reach of the community. So, Keywords is a very, very powerful tool that you could use during an event. It could be used to reach out to your visitors. It can reach out to your vacationers, folks that potentially might have second homes in Colorado. You see a lot of that. It could be used for traffic conditions. It can be used for road closures, shelter locations, providing links with updates to your websites, and even updating maps as well. The community, they want to get continual updates. One complaint that we hear a lot, right, when we have a crisis situation is the community just wants more information. And so this is a great tool to provide that continuing flow of information to your community. The example with Florida, they had 280,000 opt-ins prior to Hurricane Irma. And then once it arrived, they had over 900,000, because it just makes it very simple for those folks to be able to opt in when the event happens, as well as to opt out when the event is no longer a threat. So some of the types of the use cases that we have here, like Super Bowl, we work with the Super Bowl and protect those folks there. We also have road races. You can have musical festivals, concerts, sporting events. Anything that you have a large event would be a great use case for keywords. But just don't think of that as the only way of using keywords either. So even smaller events such as farmers markets or employee alerts for late starts and early closures, things like that for weather events, or alerting your students. Those are all other great ways of notifying those communities with using keywords. So the biggest takeaway here is, if you're using keywords today, are you using them? And then also, how can you utilize that even better than you are doing today? So moving on to the next slide. So with messaging, there are definitely different ways to notify the public. The majority of the cases are going to be that standard one-way communication, right? You're going to provide information. You're going to provide a call to action, shelter in place, evacuate, lock doors, lock windows. And maybe there's times when you could do two-way communication that might be also useful. So depending on the situation and the event. So this is a great example of when potentially you could. So let's say you had a wildfire evacuation and you had community members that have updated their members profile with certain special needs that apply to them. Well, you could reach out to those folks and you can do a polling question and say, hey, do you need, how are you? Do you need to evacuate? Do you need help to evacuate? Those types of things. So that'd be a great use case. Even potentially, let's say you have a large power outage in your community. You can also reach out to those folks and ask if they need further assistance. That's another use case that you could use. And a lot of times too, we're finding that many of these use cases, the special needs folks, we track them on paper, right? It's a paper process. So using technology, being able to digitize those, all it can do is just speed up the process and trying to notify those folks and get them help if they need it. Next slide, please. So coming from the 911 center, being that, I've been there for almost 20 years, working the floor, I do understand the importance of console space, console real estate, or lack thereof, right? So combining resources, screens, working from a single pane of glass is very important and very helpful. And so, being able to notify the folks on one platform using tools such as iPause, private networks, incident zones, social media, incident chat, keywords, even web widgets and desktop takeovers is very powerful to have that all under one pane of glass. Being able to visualize the polygons, the incident zones, weather radar, contacts, and sending all those messages right from the same platform is powerful. And continuing on with other ways to communicate and optimizing the outreach to your community, landlines, of course, VoIPs, apps, Google search, even Google Maps, websites, even hitting those signs and sirens are all great resources to be able to send out those notifications and be able to really optimize that outreach to your whole community. So, as we all know, we're a mobile society. So working with incident zones, even if somebody that may not be in the area when that message was sent out, you still have the ability to alert those folks through a mobile app if they happen to come in to that area after the fact. Using Google search, using Google Maps is another great resource to capture those folks that potentially may not be in that area when that notification actually is sent out. It's also great for seasonal residents, right? So let's say their primary residence in Florida and they're coming out here to Colorado. Florida is a statewide, for Everbridge, we have that. And so having them with the mobile app, they can come out to Colorado. If they're visiting out here and we have a wildfire or something sort of situation like that, if they cross into that evacuation zone or that incident zone, they would still be notified, even though they're not in the system because they're out in Florida. There are even further ways to expand the reach outside of the traditional 911 database and our opt-ins. In a life safety situation, you can also reach even more of the community with landlines, VoIPs, and even the wireless community. You can do that as well. You go back one. So once the event is over, now what, right? Many times the communication just doesn't end with the conclusion of the event. We need to continue to send out messages. We need to continue to update our folks. Where do we go for resources? Where do they, what communities are reopened? What roads are reopened? Where do they take the storm debris? Things like that. There's a lot of different various ways to communicate and out of your communication toolbox that you have. So to send out those pertinent informations and to be able to reach that community and optimize your outreach. So with that, I'm going to bring it back to Jessica.
Thanks, Ted. Before we kind of open it up to the floor for any questions, just wanted to mention, I will give Holly my information. I think she already has it. But if anybody on the call wants to connect either as a group or individually on anything that we discussed today, please reach out. I know we've done multiple white papers, a lot on multi-jurisdictional notification deployments and how they can save money at the state level. But we also do a lot around access and functional needs and being able to reach that population during an event. So I can send all of this over to you along with the presentation today, and then reach out to me through phone or email if you need anything or want to follow up on anything we discussed today. So with that, we still have everyone on our side on the call to help field any questions, but yeah, I'll turn it over to the group. Is there anything you wanted more clarification on or you had questions on? Was that good? Sorry, Holly, I thought we would take the full hour, but I didn't, if there's no questions.
That's okay. This is Holly. Folks, I mean, if you have questions, you can put it in the chat. You can turn on your cameras. And as Jessica mentioned, we're recording this webinar and we'll post it into the listserv along with the presentation. Looks like we have a question in the chat.
Sure. You have a question? Dispatching is so slow to type. I don't know if I read that right.
Yeah, maybe if it's easier to unmute and ask the question.
Yeah, everybody can unmute themselves. It's not restricted.
I probably would pass whatever dispatch question you have over to Ted, but
I take that as he's slow to typing because he might be dispatching.
oh, yep. I think that's it too. You advise that we can utilize Google Maps and search for notifications. Is that done through your platform or how do we utilize that? Ted or James, you want to take that?
I think that Mike can answer that question because he works closely with that partnership that we have with Google.
Mike Comer, are you on the line?
I am here. Sorry about that.
Oh, no, that's okay.
Took me a second to come off of double mute. So just to confirm, so the question is about our integration with Google Maps?
Yes.
Yeah, is it done through our platform or how do we utilize that?
Oh yeah, it definitely is done through our platform. So right now, Google monitors our feed, and essentially the any things that are dangerous to life and health and being sent from a public safety agency as well. They have the CAP standards and they have the different CAP event types and things like that, and Google monitor those directly. So as long as it's that type, and Google finds that it's relevant, there's a certain criteria that they use to search through it. They'll rebroadcast it in a number of places. So, the Google Maps product is one of them. So if you have the Maps app installed on your mobile device, it will come up and say that there's, been an Everbridge alert in the area where you are now of this, or even on google.com, if the browser is able to figure out your location. So, and it can do that a number of different ways, but usually, by your internet service provider, for example, they know that you're in the general area. So we'll say across the top of google.com, this Everbridge alert is interesting to you, essentially, right? Yeah, so it goes through a couple of review processes before it goes out to make sure that things are good and should be going out. We do one, and then Google does one, and then eventually it shows up. But the whole thing is, from your perspective, automated. As soon as you send out the content, if it's applicable, they'll rebroadcast it through their product. So it's a pretty great add-on. Then the last thing I'll add is that in the future, we're looking at what it might make sense to add as a specific checkbox as well, so that you could choose to check that box and then really flag it to Google's attention. In other words, we think that this is something relevant for Google public alerts, as opposed to them needing to monitor the feed of everything that's going out to the public and make the determination. So we'll have both of those tools available in a future.
And it's part of a partnership we have with them. So through their public alerts program, where it's not, it's only a select set of organizations, where most of them are more on the public or nonprofit side, but Everbridge is one that partners with them and goes through what Mike was explaining of being able to look at those public feeds, public alerts that are going out from Everbridge, to determine if there's these additional things that are popping up in Google search or Google Maps, to really meet people in their time of need and where they are. So if they're searching potentially to enter an area, at least they have one more way to be informed of what they're getting into or what they may be potentially looking at. And then the other question about Google integration, if it's out of the box. So it is included, but like Mike had mentioned, it's at the discretion of Google. So because they're right now reviewing the alerts and making that determination or that call of when they start displaying it within the search areas or jurisdictions. So like, for example, when a hurricane is definitely coming within a certain area or a path, personally that located out of Florida, I'll start seeing that within my search, just to be notified. But like Mike had mentioned also, there's this further deepening of that partnership where we're looking to have it where we can flag it, or the user could flag it within Ever to bring to Google's attention faster that this is something that should be displayed in the search and map, Google Maps and Google Search.
Andrew, does that answer the question?
It does. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And
And
Jessica, if you, while I've got you, if you wouldn't mind sending me, and I don't know if anyone else here would like the parameters that Google uses as far as what their criteria is, just for my own edification.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, we can. I mean, in a nutshell, you just have to be a public safety agency, and it has to be a public message. The content can't be private in nature. But essentially, that's what they look at. And then the cap severity type. So we'll definitely send it to you. It should just be that it's severe, immediate, and likely that it's going to happen and things like that, and happening now, like immediately dangerous. In other words, other examples. So we're their only private partner in the U.S. The other things that they monitor is the National Weather Service, the Geological Survey, and the Tsunami Warning Center. As well as I think for Amber Alerts from the NECMEC. So you can kind of think of things at that level, if it's a tsunami, an earthquake, or a hurricane or something like that. Things at that level are what they're after.
Thanks, Mike. I was just going to jump to Alex's question. Relatively new to the 911 information world, seeing the various differences between different jurisdictions, state to state, and not even region to region. What, if any, part or role is Everbridge participating in for standardization discussions or implementations in different states? or even nationally. This actually, is this a good time to bring up kind of Everbridge 911 Connect, or does anyone on the call want to take that?
I see it could be answered two different ways. So like when if we're looking at like emergency alerts and the standards there, I think the heaviest space, and Mike and James and Ted, or anyone can jump in, was that it's working very closely at that FEMA level. And then I know in areas where different municipalities and counties pull together to do like a council of government, or if they have like a region that they pull together, that's where at that level they're setting standards, and that we're actively involved just trying to work through based on their needs and their legal requirements and compliance, and just the community makeup itself, what works best with them. If there's other boards, I know for me, like I'm always interested to see and be able to help the team participate, because the more that we can get standardized as far as what are best practices, what works, what's an acceptable like time to do certain actions, I think it only benefits the community or just people as a whole in general.
And I think I'll just to piggyback on that, a lot of what we're talking about at the state level, I'm not sure how it operates in Colorado, but in areas where emergency management and 911 work very closely together, we're trying to not only being co-located, but also working hand in hand. We're really trying to break those silos, and the same information that emergency management can see, we're now trying to bring it into 911 too. So that's part of a different platform that we're integrating to our mass notification system. But really, as of right now, most of our statewide deployments are really around community engagement. So being able to use those specific keywords, but also to Sunita's point, really consolidating or creating those council of governments to work together on even a backup solution, or like a fail safe, just to optimize the amount of people you're trying to reach, and to have visibility as far as the network goes, to be able to see into their world and vice versa. So if anything, we just wanted to present to you all different options, of kind of how other people have deployed. But I hope that answers the question. I don't know if I missed any others.
There was a comment from Bill where he said, well, we can take it, Jessica. My child's at home sick. So.
Yeah, no problem. Bill wrote, you can set up as many templates as you can think of ahead of time. That's correct with incident communication, where you only have to put in basic details. So that's part of the platform. So you can really set it up as kind of role-based access control. So maybe if you have your dispatchers sending out notifications, they only have visibility into a specific template or mode of communication to send that alert out. But that's definitely designed on purpose so that you don't have access to everything, but you do have those templates set up ahead of time. And I don't know, Ted, if you wanted to talk a little bit, I know the question was around, 911 and emergency management. Maybe how you've used email ingestion.
Yeah, I could talk about that. So where I came from, we use email ingestion for our CAD integration. We had a paging system that was antiquated and we overused it. And so we were running into a lot of issues with our paging system in regards to multiple messages going out, as well as delayed messages and whatnot. And so I was tasked at that time to find a solution that we can use for CAD integration to where we can send out notifications and reach out to our Everbridge database to be able to have just one database, because we were housing information in our CAD system. We had it in our paging system. We had it in a repage server that we used, as well as Everbridge. And so using email ingestion, we were able to take that product, and I was able to get my dispatchers to where they were doing and sending out pages through the CAD system, or those notifications were sent out based on problem nature that we were using. And there was no change at all with the view of the dispatcher, which they really liked. And it was great on the admin side because we would send out those notifications. And when we do that, we only had one database to manage and not 4 or 5 different databases. And then in the recipient view, they loved it because they all carried around 1980 alphanumeric block pagers, adding on their belt of all the other utility stuff that they have. And we were able to eliminate those pagers, and now they're getting those messages on their smartphones or email or things like that, to where they have multiple ways of getting notified when there's a page out through the CAD system. So I hope that was helpful.
Thanks, Ted.
Yep.
Jessica, you mentioned cross-boundary notifications. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. So we do have a technology that is not iPause, but it gives you the ability to, I guess you would have to have kind of an MOU in place with your other county, but on a very granular level during evacuating, you can send a specific message out to an area, whereas obviously a lot of times with iPause, it bleeds into other areas. But as far as multiple counties, we do see a lot of times, probably more so, and chime in, Sunita, Mike, and Ted, at the state level, having a system where if you needed to notify more people outside of your jurisdiction to be able to use that capability or that life safety data to send a message out. I think that's where we see it most, when you're really crossing, county lines and jurisdictional boundaries, is probably more at the state level, to have kind of a fail safe in mind, to be able to notify as many people as possible. I don't know, Ted or Mike, if you have any more input on what you've seen.
Oh, I just wanted to clarify, just so I understood first, was were you referring to the boundaries like this case here?
Like the incident zones?
Yeah.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
even just in the, kind of the reverse alerts, commonly referred to as reverse 911, when you've got a scenario that is butting up against or crossing a jurisdictional boundary from Denver to, say, Arapahoe County or Aurora, options to simultaneously notify all the affected residents. Again, I assume it would have to come with an MOU and some governance, but does that capability exist? And if so, what does it look like?
Yeah, I know the way that I've typically seen it is if you are within, Everbridge, and if you have these different groups and opt-ins, because sometimes you could have the MOU where opt-ins in one place kind of flow into another. Typically it's seen like on a larger scale, like a state, but say within, you have multiple jurisdictions, together. And there's different groups and lists that are funneling into an emergency alert, that you want to send an emergency alert. When you send out a notification and it crosses jurisdictions, you may have people that are registered in multiple places. And when it's the message is deployed, it will do a process and dedupe. So it can just go within, start off with once for everyone in that area, and it's whatever area you set. So you can do it by, counties, you can do it by different, localities or cities. You can do it by like a radius, like draw a circle, say within this 1 mile radius, or however big you want that area to be. So all that's possible. You can even do the similar to iPause, where you're drawing like a polygon or shape as well. All that can be done, and it's more of just working through those agreements with the other jurisdictions, and then how are you gathering alerts, and how are they crossing over? Are they separate or in one place? And it gets kind of detailed from there.
So maybe you could have, like, Andrew, knowing you're from Denver, you could have one org, and then you could also have sub orgs underneath of it in case you did have that scenario where you did need to notify other people that might be right on the Arapahoe Denver line that need a notification. So I feel like that's one way you could set it up. Obviously, the politics around that would be like an MOU, but we can certainly have that. We do work with a lot of consolidated counties that have that kind of set up today. They're usually smaller, but I think we have seen it with larger areas too that are in a unique situation where the boundaries they all bleed into each other. So I think it's just a matter of how we would set up the org to have that capability for the other counties that would want to be involved. And just to add to it, maybe you just use the reverse 911, where you don't depend on the opt-in of everybody else, where you just have that opt-out kind of capability, and you can send a message directly to them. So I feel like there's a few kind of different solutions, but I'll talk to Ted, Sunita, and Mike offline to see if they, or maybe they have any other options.
No, I would just add, I think that it is possible. It's, as you said, we have to look at each individual case, and then those will be the questions, is how to set it up, and so that the right people have the right access at the right time. And given the politics and the MOUs of it is usually the bigger issue. Or sometimes, as you say, it can be different organizations, but you just log into like the Aurora organization and send something out to Aurora directly. I've seen it set up that way as well, but ours is quite flexible. It's just it's really case by case.
Yeah, another one that Angela actually reminded me of is the other way is through that Everbridge network. So when you do send out an alert, you have that possibility to make it an alert that others within the Everbridge ecosystem or the network can see as well. So then they can be a force multiplier and help get that message out. So say if you have, to be able to share messages across multiple jurisdictions or across multiple boundaries, one option is trying to do it where it's configured and set up and organized in a way that when that notification goes out, it goes out to that group, or through the network where you send out the notification, but you also inform those other jurisdictions, those other organizations, whether they're public or private, of this alert, and then they take that as a trigger for them to send their own communications within their groups. So like what Mike mentioned, there's a lot of different ways to set it up. It really boils down to, what you have to work with and what are kind of like the conditions or circumstances and what seems like the best, fit.
That just reminded me, we did something similar it's a large area out of Kansas and Missouri. And I would say about 60% of those counties were on Everbridge today, but the other ones were using other vendors. So we had a whole call where we can actually set up the network. So I think in this case, it would be the private network. So you could send it out just to all of the emergency managers from the other counties that are not Everbridge users today. And they can get the notification and then send it out to their jurisdiction. So that's one way you can set it up too, kind of in specific groups. But we have seen it. And come to think of it, it is a pretty large area too. So I think it would be relative in size to Denver. Oh, thanks, Val. That's actually a good point. Lita and Boulder and how they work together with Everbridge.
Yeah, and if you guys would like me to share, we've had some incidents recently that were kind of on the border between our two counties, between Larimer and Boulder. And without that MOU in place, an incident zone wouldn't work in that scenario, Andrew, because we don't have Boulder County's contacts in our Everbridge system. So essentially we could set an incident zone that goes over the border, but it wouldn't be contacting anyone on the Boulder County side. So when we're sending alerts on our side that may spill over into Boulder County, right now we're just making courtesy phone calls, sharing polygons with one another so they can load our polygons and kind of butt up right against that and notify on their own end of the county. But I think there's some value in discussions about MOUs and sharing that data so we can do that in one alert instead of two. But that's how we do it right now.
Thanks, Val. I
Thanks.
think that was really helpful. Is there any other questions? One clock says it's well, I guess it would be 12:51 your time, and the other one says 12:55. So I'm not sure which one's right.
Mine's is 12:52 Mountain Time. I think we're all a little bit off.
Perfect, that works. Is there any questions maybe around 911? We didn't want to put too much information out there. Obviously, we tried to make it, share more stories of how other states have used it rather than just, pitching a bunch of products. But we do have an entire platform, and a lot of this information we're also bringing into 911 right now. Holly, did you have anything before wrapping it up?
This is Holly. No, nothing additional. If there's no other questions, just thank you for coming and doing our lunch and learn. And if you want to get all that information over to me and Daryl, we will be happy to get it posted so everyone has access to it.
Awesome, thank you. And I did write down everyone's name that wanted kind of the Google parameter information. If anyone else thinks of anything after, Holly has my information, and I'll send the presentation over as well.
Awesome. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Take care.